So we are gonna go on to something new today, and this, what we're talking about today is like reflections, rotations, and translations. So you're gonna have graph paper today, and you're gonna be taking a figure and either reflecting it, rotating it, put your phones away, or we're going to translate it, okay? So when we do this, the whole class and what we're doing are called transformations. And when we do the reflection, translation, or rotation, they always should be the exact same size and exact same shape. If they're not, that would mean that you moved one of the points wrong, okay?
Did we do this last year?
Yes, you very well likely did, or in 8th grade maybe. And then there's an entire chapter in our book on this, but because of, we only have 2/3 of the year, we have to cut some stuff out. So we do this section, and that's where you're, again, showing what the 3 are. And then if there were time at the end of the year, I could always come back and do that chapter. Usually I don't have time though. So the very first thing is called a reflection. And when you first learn this, you might have learned it as a flip. So what's happening is you're taking that figure and flipping it over a line of symmetry, okay? When you have a reflection, if you could take this board and fold it up, A and F would map onto each other, B and G would, and C and H would, okay? The next thing is called a translation. And when you first learned this, you probably learned it as a slide. So what's happening here is you're taking a figure and you're moving it left or right, up or down, or you can move it diagonally too, okay? So the figure does not turn at all, and it doesn't flip at all. All it does is get moved. It stays in that same kind of order of the vertices. The last one is a rotation, and this is the one, like if I was doing that chapter, a rotation, some kids like to do them, some kids hate it. Rotations, you have to use a compass and a protractor, and it takes probably, I would say 10 minutes to do one problem because you have to move every single point around a point and a certain amount of degrees, and it's just kind of, like, what?
Annoying.
Maybe annoying is a good word. Some people like it though, like maybe if you're into art and that type of thing, you might like it. Some kids don't. But for us this year, we're not doing any with a compass and protractor. We're just gonna do what we're doing today. So this part is just asking us, are these reflections, translations, or rotations? So what is this one right here? Rotation, very good. So it was rotated about the origin, and then it was rotated this amount of degrees. You don't have to specify that, but notice it was turned. What do you think about this one? Reflection. It was reflected over the y-axis. Very good. Then for C.
Rotation? Oh wait, no. What's the other one?
Translation.
Yeah.
Translation, yes. It was just taken and kind of slid diagonally. And then here, reflection over the X. So if you folded over the X-axis, they would map onto each other. Very good. And then if we look at E,
Rotation.
that one is a rotation. It looks like it's rotated about the origin. So that one is a rotation. It is turned.
Reflection.
Translation. Because you just moved it over.
Yeah, actually that one is just kind of slid. If it was a reflection, this should be like turned, okay? So this one is a translation. Okay, Now, if we go to this page, they just want us to state like what this would be if I took this and moved it to there about this point. What do you think that would be? This one's a little bit harder, but when you have a rotation, you always do it about a point and a certain amount of degrees. So this one is a rotation. So you're kind of just looking at this point going to there. Okay? Now here, what about a van door? If you just open that up, what do you think that is?
Translation.
Yes, it's a translation. Okay. And what do you guys think about C if you had your footprints?
Reflection.
It's a reflection. If you had this as your line of symmetry and folded that, that would be a reflection. Very good. So now that we understand that, we are going to look at each separate one and we're gonna do some of them. So the first thing that we're gonna do is we're gonna look at reflections. And I don't think, do you know how yesterday I gave you that cheat sheet? Do you know what I'm talking about? Can you guys take that out, cause you're gonna write a couple things on it today. Oh yeah, did I miss it?
No, it's just 'cause I was here yesterday.
Oh, yesterday, okay,
Yeah.
perfect. So, here's the notes from yesterday, and then there's the cheat sheet.
Okay.
Anyone else gone yesterday that needs the cheat sheet? Okay, so if you would write this down somewhere on that cheat sheet so you have it for the test, okay?
Let's see.
So if you would write those two rules on your cheat sheet somewhere. And if you wanted to add a example in your notes, Okay, so sometimes today we're gonna be given a figure and asked to reflect it over the x-axis, and sometimes we're gonna be asked to reflect it over the y-axis. When you reflect it over the x, what happens is you just change the sign of your y coordinate. So notice in my example here, I didn't change the x, but I changed the sign of the y. If it's negative, turn it to positive. If it's positive, turn it to negative. When you reflect over the y-axis, you're gonna change the sign of your x coordinate. So if this is 2, it's gonna become -2. And notice we don't change the y at all, okay? So if we go here, we are going to try one of these. So the first thing we're gonna do is we are going to plot these 3 points on our graph paper. And today when you guys do this, I'll give you graph paper for this. So the first one is over 3 up 2, and that is our A. B is 2 to the right, down 2, that is our B. And C is 4 to the right, and then down 5. And that is our C. Okay? Now, when you do these, there's 2 different ways you can do it. You could use that rule that we just went over, and I'll show you how to do that in a second. Or you can do it on the graph itself, and I'll explain how you do that, okay? So in this problem, we want to take each of these points and reflect them over the x, okay? If I look at this A, and I go straight down to the x-axis, it's 2 units above the x. So to reflect it over that, I have to go 2 units below the x. So if it's above the x, it's gonna end up below the x. And when we do this, you guys, we call it A with a little asterisk by it. It stands for A prime. So when you move A, the new point becomes A with an asterisk. Now again, how I did that was 2 spaces above the x-axis, so I went 2 spaces below, and that would be my new point, okay? Now if I look at B, do you see how it's 2 spaces below? That means I would move it 2 spaces above, and that would be my new B coordinate, which I'm gonna call B prime. Okay? And then I have my C, and C right now is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 units below. So then we're gonna go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 units above. So if your point is above the x-axis, it's gonna end up below. If it's below the x-axis, it's gonna end up above. Now I do have rulers in the front of the room that you can use when you go to connect the dots, but that would be our reflected figure. It should be the same size, same shape. It's not in the correct order per se, but it should look about the same size, same shape. And then you can kind of think about, if I could fold this board over the X, would my C's line up? Would my B's line up? And would my A's line up? Okay? So that would be your answer. Now, I do want to show you, if you would rather use that rule I just had you guys copy down. That said, when you're going over the X, just change the sign of your Y. Okay? So let's say you'd rather do that. What you would have done instead is just come here and wrote the new coordinates of your A prime. And what it said was just change the sign of your Y. So X stays the same. If that's +2, it's a -2. Okay? B becomes B prime. X stays the same. If this is a -2, it becomes a +2. And then again, for my C prime, X stays the same, my Y I change. So if you really wanted to make sure you did this right on the test, you could do both ways and then make sure, is our A prime at 3, -2? And it is. Is our B prime over 2 up 2? And it is. And our C prime, is it over 4 down, over 4 up 5, sorry, and it is. You really only have to do it one of those two ways, though, whichever one you prefer. So let's do one more like this. So I'm gonna plot those points again. A is over 3 up 2. B is over 2 down 2. And C is over 4 down 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, and then I'm gonna connect those points and make that triangle. Okay, now this time I am reflecting it over the y-axis. So this is going to be that second rule you wrote down, and when you reflect it over the y, you change the sign of your x. Or if you don't want to do it that way, I'll show you how to do it on the actual graph itself. Okay, so let's not worry about the rule. Let's just look at how would I do this on the graph itself. Now this time I'm reflecting over my y. Yeah.
I have an idea of how it works.
Yeah.
You just count how many spaces between the lines, and you count that same amount of spaces.
Like if I was doing this, I'd count this.
Yeah.
And then go 1, 2, 3
Yeah.
to here. Yep, exactly. So A is 3 spaces from my y-axis, so then I'd go 3 in the opposite direction and put A prime. B is 2 spaces away, so I'd go 2 more spaces, and that's my B prime. C is 1, 2, 3, 4 away, so I'd go 1, 2, 3, 4, and that is my C prime. And then I would go ahead and connect these. Okay. Does it look like if we folded that it would fold onto itself? Yes. And then if you did it the other way, okay, what that rule said is change the sign on your X. So what you would do is just change the sign on your X, leave the Y as is, okay? So this would be -2, -2, C prime would be -4, -5. And then you can always go here and see if A prime is -3, -2, is B -2, -2, and so on. Okay? All right. So now I would like you guys to write this down somewhere on your cheat sheet so you have it for the test. We're gonna write this down and one more thing today. Did you guys hear that influenza A is going around? Mr. Check's kids have it.
Everybody is sick right now.
Yeah, I think Miss Collison's kids had it last week. Yeah, so if you get really sick, think about if they could be that. Okay, did I give you enough time to write? Alright, so what we're gonna do next is that slide. So what's gonna happen is they're gonna give you something that has these arrows on the end that look kind of weird. They're called vectors. When you have these little just arrowheads on both sides, it's called a vector. Don't worry about what a vector is. Think of it just as a coordinate pair, like an ordered pair, okay? So what's gonna happen is they're gonna give you a vector that looks like this. This number tells you to start at the point of the first triangle or figure that you're moving. And if it's positive, you would do just like if you were plotting a point. If it's positive, you go to the right. Then you go to the second number, and if it's positive, you go up. If it's negative, you go down. So this one is negative, so I would go down 5. So you're gonna have that original figure, like say, I'll just really quick sketch something that it could look like. So let's just say you had a figure that was right here, okay? And it was 2, -5, and say that this was A, B, C, D. What you would do is for every A, you would count 2 over and 5 down. So maybe your new A prime ended up there. Then your B, you'd go 2 over to the right and 5 down. And then you'd do the same thing with D. And then you would do the same thing with your C. And I'm just sketching this, so it's probably not gonna look the best. But then when you're done, oops, that's not a straight line, but pretend it is. That would be my new figure. And it would look like you just took it and slid it, okay? You didn't turn it, you didn't flip it. So let's try one of these actually on a graph. So first thing I'm gonna do is plot these 4 points on the graph. Whichever way you do these today, what I grade is your graph, okay? So first you're gonna plot -7, and there's 8 going across, so -7, -2, and that would be my Q. R is -8, -5. And that is your R. S is -4, -7. And then T is -4, -2. So our original figure, and there are rulers up front that you may use, that's our original figure, okay? Now, they wanted us to move this 7, 1, okay? If it's a +7, oops, if it's a +7, you move it 7 to the right. If it's a +1, you move it 1 up, okay? So for each point, we're gonna go 7 to the right, 1 up, and you start at the points that are here. You don't start at the origin, okay? So for each point, I'm gonna count 7 over. So I'm gonna start with Q, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, up 1, and then I put my Q prime just like before. T, I go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, up 1, and I put my T prime. R, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, up 1, that's my R prime. And S, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, up 1, that is my S prime. And when you connect that, it should look like you just took that figure and slid it, okay? now let's go down to this one. And we're gonna plot these points. So M is -2, so left 2, up 1, 2, 3. That is my M. Then my N is -4, up 6. Okay? And P is -1, up 8. And then you would connect those. Now, what we are going to do is we are going to move this figure, and the vector they want us to move it is a +2, -3. If it's a +2, what direction do I move it? 2 to the, if it's a +2, you go 2 to the right. And then on the second one, I believe that was negative, wasn't it? So the second one is negative, so then we go down 3. So the first one was positive, we go 2 to the right. Second one was negative, we go 3 down. Okay, so let's go ahead and do that. We're gonna go 2 to the right and 3 down for each point. 1, 2, down 3. 2 to the right, down 3. Don't be surprised if your new N ends up right on top of what your original M was. That can happen sometimes. And then if I go over 2, down 3, that is my M prime. And that is my figure. Okay? All right. Then if we go to this page, the last thing we're gonna do is a rotation. And here's the deal. As I said earlier, if we do a rotation, we have to use a compass and protractor, unless if we always do one specific kind, and that's what we're gonna do. So here is our rule. We're always gonna rotate our points 180 degrees above the origin, because when you do it that way, it says multiply the X and Y coordinate by 1, but that also would be, it might be easier for you to think of this as, actually I might change it right on the screen. It might be easier for you to think of this as you switch the sign of both your X and your Y. All right, so what's gonna happen for the rotation ones is you're going to just switch the sign of both your X and your Y. So let's go and first plot our first points. So F is over 2, up 1. G is over 7, up 1. H is over 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, down 3. That is our H. And I is over 1, down 1, 2, 3. Okay. So that is our original figure. Now in this one, if you remember what the rules were, for each your X and your Y coordinates, you change the sign. So your new F would be -2, -1. Your new G would be -7, -1. Your new H would be -6, +3. And your new J would be -1, +3. Okay? So I'm gonna go ahead and plot those points on here. So F prime is -2, -1. G prime is -7, -1. H is -6, +3. And J is -1, +3. So my new figure would look like that, okay? And what happened here is this figure got turned upside down, if you notice, and that's what would happen. You just kind of think if you took it and turned it 180 degrees, what would it look like? Okay? Now, if you guys just look at this, what kind is this one? You just have to say rotation, reflection, translation. This is a reflection, okay? And then if I look at the next one down, it is a, isn't that one just translated?
Translation.
Yeah, that one's just a translation. So I'm gonna hand out graph paper to you guys. Now this is gonna look like a lot because I give you the assignment and then I also tell you which ones to graph. So this is your assignment, okay? And then these are the ones you have to graph, okay? And so everybody, when you turn it in, should have 8 graphs. And the graph paper I give you has 4 graphs on each side. So every graph should have a figure on it, okay? So I will grab graph paper for you all. And then today, let's just stay where we're at and work. Sophia, once you're ready to take that quiz that you meant for fourth grade, let me know. What was that? Like at 7:30 or so? Okay. And I wanna say maybe somebody else in here hasn't taken the quiz from right before break, and if that's you, there is a practice quiz that I would suggest you guys going over and kind of reviewing on, and then take the quiz, because it's been a long time since